Hello, and welcome to some Dodge family history. This is where I present information and research on my ancestors who served in the military during the early 20th century. Today, I will be presenting on draft registration cards from 1948 through 1975. In preparing this presentation, I found that presenting some of the history of Selective Service registration and conscription helps provide context for the information that is available on the various draft registration cards. In addition to some of the history behind Selective Service registration, we will look at the different draft registration cards, the information they contain, and how to read and understand the information contained on each draft card. Selective Service registration for World War II continued until the Selective Service Act was allowed to expire on March 31, 1947. A new Selective Service Act was enacted on June 24, 1948, and required all men ages 18 to 25 to register with Selective Service for possible induction into the military. Registration began on August 30, 1948, with men born on or after August 30, 1922, and continued through September 18th, with men born on or before September 18, 1930. On August 29, 1948, the Courier-Journal newspaper from Louisville, Kentucky noted, "Registration will continue after all the pre-September 19, 1930 men have been booked. As men become 18, they are required to register within 5 days. No 18-year-olds will be drafted, but they must register. Nor will veterans of World War II be drafted, provided they served honorably a year or more between September 20, 1940 and June 24, 1948, or serve honorably for more than 90 days during the real shooting war, December 7, 1941 to September 2, 1945, but they too must register." This means that there will be two draft cards for most men born between August 30, 1922 and March 31, 1929, one from World War II and one from 1948. The Courier-Journal also explained the post-registration process. A week after he registers, each man will receive by mail an 8-page classification questionnaire. All this questionnaire amounts to is more detail on the questions previously answered briefly at the registration office. These questions are to be filled in and mailed back to the local board. The information included in these questionnaires is the real business, for it is from the information included in them that the local draft board will pick those men who will be called up for pre-induction physical examinations. The draft registration cards from 1948 through 1959 are now beginning to be released on Fold 3. The first two states that are presently available are Alaska and Wyoming. Below are the World War II and 1948 draft cards for Robert Thomas Fitzgerald, one of my Grandpa Dodge's cousins. Robert Fitzgerald completed his World War II Selective Service registration in 1946. The front of Robert's World War II draft card indicates that he was discharged. There are many World War II veterans who registered with their local draft boards after completion of their military service, and this is an example of a registrant who completed their Selective Service registration after they completed their military service in World War II. His 1948 draft card indicates that he previously registered with the local Selective Service Board as part of the Selective Service Act of 1940. His 1948 draft registration card lists his military service during World War II, which is on the back of the card, and indicates that he entered the Navy on May 8, 1945, when he was only 17. Robert served 1 year in the Navy and was honorably discharged on May 16, 1946, exempting him from being drafted following Selective Service registration in 1948. The next 1948 draft card we will look at in greater detail will be for my grandpa, Robert Earl Dodge. My grandpa was born on July 8, 1930 in Laramie, Wyoming. When he completed his Selective Service registration on September 17, 1948, he was living at 633 West Davis Street in Rawlins, Wyoming. He listed his mother, Mrs. Alice Dodge, as the person who will always know his address. The person recording the information misspelled my great-grandma's name as Ellis instead of Alice. My grandpa worked for the Union Pacific Railroad in the signal department, repairing signal lights and blocks on the railroad. He was 5 feet 7 inches tall, 145 pounds, had green eyes, brown hair, and a medium complexion. The 1948 draft registration cards had a new Selective Service number at the top right corner of the card. The sequence for this new Selective Service number remained the same from 1948 until Selective Service registration was suspended in 1975. My grandpa's Selective Service number, located at the top right corner of the draft card, is 48 4 30 39. The Selective Service number is read as follows. The first number corresponds to one of the contiguous 48 states, with Wyoming being the 48th state. Washington, D.C., Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and other U.S. territories were numbered after the 48 states. Also, the state numbering did not change after Alaska and Hawaii attained statehood. The second number is the number of the local draft board, with 4 being the number of the draft board for Carbon County, Wyoming. The third number, 30, is the year my grandfather was born. The last number, 39, indicates that my grandpa was the 39th registrant born within that local draft board in 1930. Following Selective Service registration, each registrant was given a Selective Service Registration Certificate. This is my grandpa's Selective Service Registration Certificate, which he held onto and was passed down to me. The front of the registration certificate lists his name, address, date and place of birth, and date of registration. The back of the Selective Service Registration Certificate gives his physical description. Each registrant was required to keep this card on him at all times. On December 7, 1950, when my grandpa was 20 years old, he received his Selective Service Notice of Classification, another document he kept and has been handed down to me. He was classified as 1A, meaning that he was available for military service. On July 10, 1951, he reported to the recruiting station at Denver, Colorado for a pre-induction physical examination. He was found physically fit and accepted for military service. On November 2, 1951, my grandpa received his order to report for induction. His order to report for induction is still another document I'm glad he held on to. He was to report to his local draft board on November 19, 1951, in Rawlins, Wyoming. From there, he returned to the recruiting station at Denver, Colorado, where he was accepted for military service and inducted into the United States Marine Corps on November 21, 1951. He then reported for basic training at the Marine Recruit Depot at San Diego. Following basic training, he completed the field telephone course, qualifying as a wireman. He was then stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for the duration of his active military service, attaining the rank of corporal. My grandpa was discharged from active duty on November 6, 1953, and then spent 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserves, receiving an honorable discharge on November 21, 1959. Each local Selective Service Board kept a ledger of all Selective Service registrants, which tracked their Selective Service registration, classifications, and military service. The Selective Service ledger for my grandpa is shown here. Following his induction into military service, my grandpa's classification was changed from 1A to 1C inducted, meaning that he was inducted into military service and currently on active military duty. Following his discharge from active duty, his classification was changed to 1C reserves. On March 30, 1956, my grandpa received notification that his classification was changed to 4A, indicating that he had completed his military service. On April 26, 1961, he was reclassified as 5A, indicating that he was now past the age of liability for military service, meaning that he was no longer eligible for induction into military service. Selective Service registration and military conscription continued through the 1950s, 1960s, and into the early 1970s. The first draft lottery since World War II was held on December 1, 1969, with the order of induction being determined by the birthday of each registrant. For the 1969 draft lottery, the date of September 14th was chosen first, which meant that all eligible men who had completed their Selective Service registration who were born on September 14th would be selected first for induction for military service during the following year. Even though the last induction into military service occurred on June 30, 1973, and the authority to conduct the military draft also ended on June 30, 1973, Selective Service registration continued for all men following their 18th birthday, and draft lotteries were still held until Selective Service registration was suspended in April of 1975. The last draft card we'll look at is for my dad. Dad completed his Selective Service registration on September 18, 1974. Now, as Dad is still alive, I have redacted some of his personal information. I obtained a copy of his Selective Service registration card and classification ledger from the National Archives at St. Louis. The Selective Service number at the top right corner of the card is the same format as my grandpa's Selective Service number in 1948, Dad's selective service number is 42, 6, 56, 693. 42 representing the state of Utah, 6 representing the local draft board, 56 representing the year of his birth, and 693 indicating that he was the 693rd person born within that local draft board during 1956. Dad's draft registration certificate, which he did not hold on to, was mailed to him on September 19, 1974. Dad was initially classified as 1H, meaning that he was not currently being processed for induction. The last draft lottery was held on March 12, 1975. This final draft lottery assigned lottery numbers for those selective service registrants who were born in 1956. The Price Utah newspaper, the Sun Advocate, from March 27, 1975 reported, men born in 1956 who are assigned lottery numbers 095 and below can expect to be reclassified into an available class and then processed into a readily inductible pool for 1976. This will have no impact on their personal lives unless a national emergency arises and induction authority is restored and a mobilization of manpower is required. The number 046 to the left of his selected service number is my dad's draft lottery number, indicating that had there been a draft in 1976, he would have been reclassified and inducted into military service. Following the lottery, Dad was reclassified as 1A. Fortunately for my dad, however, no national emergency was declared and he was not drafted. Selective service registration was reinstituted in July of 1980 with a requirement that all men born on January 1, 1960 and later register. According to the Selective Service website, men born between March 29, 1957 and December 31, 1959 do not have any Selective Service registration record. Selective Service registration continues today, with all men registering as they turn 18. The Selective Service website, www.sss.gov, allows those who need to register to do so online, as well as those who have registered to verify their registration status. To request a copy of a Selective Service registration card from 1948 through 1975, or a copy of a classification list from 1940 through 1975, complete the Selective Service System Records Request Form, which is available online, and send the completed form to the National Archives at St. Louis. When a record is located, the National Archives will send you notice that the record has been located and will ask for payment. For a copy of a World War I classification list, contact the National Archives in Atlanta, Georgia. All World War I and World War II draft cards are now available online at Ancestry, Family Search, and Fold3. Draft cards from 1948 to 1959 are now beginning to be made available online at Fold3. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and found it informative. With the continuation of Selective Service registration from 1948 to 1975, many millions of Americans found themselves liable for military service. Their registration, classification, and military service was tracked by local draft boards across the country. The draft cards and classification lists from this time are an invaluable record of those who lived through this time, providing us with a snapshot of their lives as they face the real possibility of military service and all that would accompany that service. We should be thankful and grateful for those who were asked to serve our country as they sacrificed time away from their lives, schooling, jobs, and loved ones. Many even sacrificed their lives as they served our country. Taking the time to search out their service, as recorded in Selective Service records and available military records, is one way to show appreciation and gratitude for their service, as well as preserving a portion of their lives for those generations to come. Thank you.